Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another podcast, and I am absolutely thrilled today to have with me Eric Sydell. Eric, first of all, welcome and thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me today.
You bet. Thanks for having me, Tom. Looking forward to the conversation.
Eric, could you tell us a little bit about your professional background?
Yeah, so I'm in the compliance realm now, but surprisingly, I started my life as a psychologist, an industrial psychologist, actually, and spent 20 plus years in HR technology. You can think of industrial psychology as sort of business psychology, the psychology of what makes people work and happy at work and so forth. But really, my background was always in statistics, so psychometrics, creating ways to measure human capabilities and correlate them with job performance outcomes and company success.
I have a master's degree in labor and human relations, so I find all of that very fascinating. I've studied all of that academically. What a great background to bring to compliance.
Thank you. Yeah, my view has always been about data and how to make sense of data and information. And that's a natural fit for the compliance world. And right now, with the advent of AI technologies and other algorithmic technologies, it's a golden age of being able to process and make sense of the information around us. And that has a very clear application to compliance and to the challenges in the compliance world.
Could you tell us what you're up to now, Eric?
Yes. A little less than 2 years ago, we founded Vero AI, which is an AI native, I should say generative AI native platform that allows us to study data and information out there in the world and process it and make sense of it. And when we first started, we didn't really recognize the extent to which our capability was relevant for the compliance world. I thought of it as sort of a general scientific platform that could allow us to better capture information and make sense of it. Only 20% of the information in the world is numeric, Tom, and that's the information that goes into a business intelligence dashboard. And there's been solutions for that sort of thing on the market for decades. But 80% of the information in the world is unstructured. It's text, it's video, it's imagery, it's things like that. And traditionally, you could not study that information at scale. There's always been manual statistical techniques that we could use to study that type of thing, like we could do a keyword search or that sort of thing. But that's pretty basic in terms of power and not very scalable. And so what we realized early on in the development of Vero AI, Tom, is that generative AI gives us a way to scale unstructured data analytics in a way that wasn't possible before. And so chiefly what that means is we use large language models to break down and process elements of unstructured data, text passages, elements of images, videos, etc., and then map those things to different criteria or outcomes, which you can think of as, in our case of our discussion today, compliance frameworks. So to me and to us at Vero AI, generative AI is just statistics by another name. It's just a way to understand the world around us better and faster and at scale. And the applications of that are tremendous. So I know there's a lot of controversy sometimes about AI and particularly generative AI because there's a lot of hype around it and there's a lot of claims that it can do things that it can't necessarily do, and there's problems like bias and hallucinations and things like that. But those things manifest in the solutions that people are creating with it, not so much in the fundamental aspect of what a large language model is, which is a way for us to interact with and study unstructured data in a way that was never possible before. So to me, that's statistics, and that helps us understand the world around us better, and that is full stop, purely a beautiful thing.
I'm feeling the beauty. So who are your primary customers at Vero AI?
Yep. So we've started out with partnerships with different accounting and audit type firms, companies that have a lot of auditors on staff and are continually processing and reviewing client documentation, files of various sorts. It can be PDFs, it can be Word docs, it can be scanned images of spreadsheets, anything like that. So a lot of compliance processes as take a lot of time to manually review and make sense of the documentation. And it's not atypical for a compliance audit to require hundreds and hundreds of hours of human auditor time. And so you'll see these sets of documents that are many documents, a lot of complexity. There's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of cross references. There's a lot of nuance that a human has to read through and process and evaluate on very specific standards. That's what AI is very good at. And that's what the AI that we've architected is very good at. So it's a natural fit for a compliance firm, of an audit or accounting type firm that has got people that have to process a lot of information for their clients in order to do these compliance audits. But it's also a good fit for any company, mid-size and larger, even smaller organizations have compliance needs, have internal compliance needs, internal audit needs. So companies spend a lot of time and effort reviewing information, making sense of the information, and then ultimately passing it along to their auditors. They can also use our platform. They can simply load in documentation, click a button, and immediately it'll process on whatever framework they might be interested in and organize everything. It's not going to say you comply or you don't comply. It's more of a pre-audit step that gets everything in order and then makes the ultimate compliance more closer to just a check the box rather than a detailed analysis that has to occur at that stage.
Is it identifying anomalies or other things that might be outside the norm that
Yeah.
then could be followed up for additional investigation?
Yeah.
Does it move to a predictive model which would tell the user, I'm going to start with that term and move to some other users, but tell the user this either is a problem or it could quickly be a problem?
That's such a great question. And absolutely it does. And I think in some ways, I think the AI automated compliance is at the stage that the web was when it first came into existence. It was like everybody took textbooks and company materials and just put them online. And that was it. It was like, hey, we're just going to put this content on the internet. And now that's it. And that was like a lack of creativity. And then the internet technology blossomed and there was all these additional capabilities and people thought differently about it. And I feel like with AI compliance, we're sort of at that step right now where everybody's like, okay, we can automate what a human does to do a compliance analysis. But like you just said, wow, is there a lot more that's possible when we start to expand our minds with what this technology can do? Yes, 100%. There's no reason to limit a compliance evaluation to one framework 1 year. Oh, we have to comply with this particular ISO framework every year. Okay, let's go through the motions every single year and do this. Instead, it's a continuous process now. And it doesn't have to be compliant with just one framework. It can be compliant with many or all and many other things too that you might want to model in. One of the things we're doing a lot of is looking at the ingested documentation and identifying inefficiencies, redundancies, could be illegalities. It could be all manner of other opportunities that aren't even part of that particular framework. But because it's automated, why not? We can surface things that could not be realistically looked at before. And then we can expand beyond that. Why not look at additional sources of data? We can model in the ROI of a business process or do predictive analytics to identify risks that might be coming down the road. We could look at compliance with legislation that exists today and also emerging legislation. That's a beautiful thing. A lot of companies, for example, when we look at AI, are saying we want to capitalize on AI technology, but we're not sure what AI regulation might be coming down the pike. And not just in this country, but globally. Okay, no problem. We catalog all that stuff and we can immediately run a business process against current and future legislation globally to tell you what are the risks today and what are the risks tomorrow so that you can plan better. So all this stuff becomes possible as we load in more information and evolve our frameworks from the narrow specific frameworks to all frameworks and then some. So we talk a lot about beyond compliance now, because once we start to load this information and scale the evaluation of it, there's no limit.
The compliance component of that, when you sit across with a chief compliance officer If you do, they're probably going to be a lawyer. And I'm a lawyer by professional background. My last stat class was in graduate school, and I hung on by the skin of my teeth to get out of Statistics 101. So how do you help a chief compliance officer who's actually charged by the Department of Justice with doing the things that you have just described, help them to understand the data they would get from Vero AI and how to apply that as either a research tool to uncover anomalies or in some of the more proactive modes that you've described?
Yeah, that is a challenge with AI, with generative AI, with new technologies in general, because it's hard to understand what all the different tools can do out there in the market. So, a big part of what we do is try to explain simply what our tool and what our process can do. So I think there's nothing better than a quick demo for people to see, okay, you brought in this information, you clicked a button, and then you got this output. That's the most powerful way that I have to explain it. It does require thinking differently. And when I think of, like I said, when I think of AI, to me it's statistics. Nobody else really thinks of it that way. So that's a fairly unique way to conceptualize of what AI can do, I think. So we see all this power and it's obvious to us, but we have to demonstrate it and help companies to understand and realize. And we're just at the start of this. The power of these tools is tremendous, but most companies are not leveraging this type of capability yet because it's so new. So I think it's a challenge to get the word out, to explain it in simple terms, and to really just demonstrate the power of it. And that's what becomes compelling at the end of the day.
How do you, or maybe let's just start with when you sit down with a client or potential client or customer, are you talking to a CISO? Are you talking to a CFO? Are you talking to a CEO? Are you talking to a CCO? Perhaps all of the above, none of the above? Who do you have these initial conversations with a potential customer, or is it even directly with a board?
It's always the case, I think, that the higher in the organization you go, the better. So I think for a company like mine, we are certainly looking for C-level interactions as much as possible. The board is fantastic as well. But a lot of the times when we're interacting with people, it's at conferences. And so we're talking with people who are a little bit lower, who are in the weeds a little bit more, and recognizing the tremendous workload that is on their compliance teams and how it's difficult to get through all of the compliance work that has to be done. You also see a lot of problems with overworked, overloaded compliance people, auditors themselves. They have tons of information to review and it's hard to do. A lot of times we're having discussions lower level with directors, VP level people about the specific challenges that they're facing, and they get it real fast. They understand the opportunity that this type of technology brings very quickly. I think the higher level we go, it's a broader discussion about the potential savings, about positioning for the future, about doing more with technology and combining analytics from a lot of different domains into one platform, really, that can do a lot of increasing amount of the workload of understanding an organization and not just helping it comply, but helping the business processes themselves be more effective and better, and helping to plan for the future, helping to save money, and so forth.
In September of 2024, the Department of Justice issued a document called the Evaluation of Corporate Compliance Programs. This is a document that was first released in 2017, and it's been updated 4 or 5 times since that initial release, where they tell compliance professionals their expectations of what they want in a best practices compliance program. In the 2024 update, for the first time, they raised the topic of AI, but it was more from a corporate governance perspective. And the DOJ, at least at that point, wanted compliance to take the lead around AI governance. Can the Vero tool assist a compliance officer in the governance aspect, particularly around, you've already mentioned bias and some of the algorithm challenges? How does the Vero AI tool, or how could it help in the realm of governance?
Yeah, that's a great question. When we first started Vero AI, Tom, we were thinking that is specifically what we would focus on is AI governance, AI and algorithmic auditing types of things. But a couple of years ago, we found that market to be pretty nascent, pretty much not very strong at that point. And I think it's getting stronger over time as AI technologies seep into the mainstream more and more. But my view, and it's always been my view, is that the only way we can really harness AI for the benefit of mankind, of humankind, is with AI. We have to be able to measure outputs that AI systems create. And in order to do that, we can actually use AI technologies themselves. And that's my stance, is that we have to monitor technologies of all sorts, especially AI, and that is the primary way we're going to gain control of these systems. So you wouldn't build a nuclear power plant down the road from your house and then just say, oh yeah, we'll just send, I don't know, Kevin over there every couple of months to check on it to make sure it's going okay. No, you have a systematic, ongoing, continuous, rigorous monitoring process, right? To make sure that thing doesn't melt down. And so AI is the same thing. It's massively powerful. It's increasingly pervasive in the world around us. The only way we can really make sure that it doesn't go off the rails is if we're monitoring it, if we're seeing it. And so, again, we talk about AI as statistical technology. This is a technology that allows us to monitor things, to monitor information and to study it and understand it. So it's a perfect application to use a system like ours to measure and harness AI technologies at scale. And so you look at emerging standards like ISO 42001, which has to do with AI systems, the EU AI Act. And then in different domains, there's a lot of specific AI related laws that are slowly kind of coming online. I came from the hiring world, and in hiring, New York City has a thing called Local Law 144 that requires companies that use AI in hiring to post calculations that show group difference scores on the AI tool. So if candidates who are majority white members score higher than African American applicants, then that would have to be posted on their website if it's an AI tool that's being used to create those scores. So you'll see a lot of like local jurisdictions and states and things proliferating different types of laws, and all that stuff is part of the process, I think, and we can monitor those types of compliance with any sort of law like that and help companies immediately understand where they sit. So I think that the need to monitor AI is growing, and companies are recognizing increasingly that it's important to do. And the other aspect of that is that there's not been a lot of legislation from the US federal government around AI, but we can still help companies to monitor it and make sure that it's adaptive and that it's good for the company and that it's good for their workers and that it's good for humanity as well. And I think that's important regardless of what federal legislation there is or isn't.
So I meant to ask you a little bit earlier, could you tell me what the Violet impact model is and how it provides a comprehensive view of the impact of algorithms and complex systems?
Absolutely. When we first started, we wanted to create a framework that we could use to talk about AI and to talk about good uses of AI versus not so good uses of AI. And one of the things we recognized was that people don't really know how to think about evaluating AI. What is a good AI? What's a bad AI? And there's so many different types of AI, and it becomes very confusing. And so we created Violet as a framework that is intended to be a comprehensive or objective view of the impact of AI, or you could think of it more broadly as just algorithms in general. And the letters Violet, the Violet model, so the L, I'm just going to go out of order. The L is legislative preparedness. This is obvious stuff about being aligned with legislation and future legislation. So we can actually score that automatically with our system, with the Vero AI system. And then we also have the I in the model. I'll move to that letter, is integrity. And for us, that includes fairness and bias and things like that. Legislative preparedness and fairness, bias, those are super important things that everybody would recognize as being important. But the other letters go beyond those sort of basic things. And so what we're really trying to do with Violet is we said it's more than just bias that's important. It's more than just legislative preparedness that's important. What are the other things that are important and that a company should be considering? Now, remember, I'm a psychologist and all my colleagues are psychologists. So we think of this from a fairly humanistic standpoint. Like we want to help companies create AI technologies that are beneficial for the world, and not just for companies, but also for humankind. V, the first letter is visibility, and for us that indicates how much people are impacted by an AI are aware of its existence. And if you're not aware of its existence, you can't understand it or question it or hold it to any sort of standard if you don't even know it's there. So visibility is a very important thing. Then we have integrity, as I mentioned before. The O, VIO, is optimization. And that is parameters that have to do with how well a model was built and whether it could be improved. So we can analyze things related to optimization with AI models. Then we have the L again, legislative preparedness. And then we have the E, and the E is super important, and it's effectiveness. So this is really how well an AI actually works. And Tom, I spent 20 years in HR tech, and I have to tell you, in so many situations, companies sell complicated tools that have AI or algorithms or other high-tech things built into them, and they cost a lot of money, and the company has no idea whether and how it works. And this is common. This is so common. And in hiring, again, the world that I came from, you can be fully compliant in hiring by flipping a coin and deciding who to hire because it's not biased against anybody, right? If you're black, white, it doesn't care. The coin doesn't care. And it's not invading anybody's data privacy. That's fully legal. Just flip a coin and decide who to hire. But it's obviously useless as a way to decide something, right? But you're compliant. In so many cases, compliance standards are like that. They're just looking at the very minimum threshold. What about, does it actually work? That's a whole nother question. And so why not start to model that in? That's why that E is so important to me and to us at Vero is we want to help companies understand whether a business process actually does anything. And a lot of times, you might as well just be flipping a coin instead of paying $1 million to some random tech thing that actually has no benefit. The E is important. Then we have T, the last letter is transparency, and that sort of gets at whether and how an AI or an algorithmic solution is understandable, transparent to the people that it impacts. For us, this is a comprehensive model. We can score all these things automatically. And we think that by putting that forth, our hope is that companies will understand that it's not just about, efficiency or saving time. There's a lot of other things to consider when we think about these complex technologies. So hopefully that can help companies to implement tools that are good for people as well as the organization itself.
How can either a customer use, or how will you advocate using the Vero AI tool in the corporate procurement process?
Great question. Procurement is not compliance, but it's structurally similar. So we can replace a compliance framework in our system with a list of procurement criteria. So if an organization has a long list of standards and requirements for vendors that it works with, we can simply upload those to the platform, and essentially it works exactly the same as it would if you were doing an ISO 27000 or a SOC 2 type of compliance thing. You load in all the documentation, click the button, and then it's immediately going to evaluate how compliant or how in alignment is all the content is with the procurement standards that the organization has. So many organizations have massive procurement backlogs. They got like one person that is supposed to be reviewing all these different systems and technologies and things and trying to help the organization move forward. And it takes a super long time. And so often we hear these situations where there's a bottleneck there. So why not automate it? Why not use a tool like this? It doesn't decide which vendor you should select, but it does organize all could be hundreds, thousands of pages of different types of information, and it can compare, it can contrast, it can do whatever you want in order to make that procurement decision vastly easier.
Let me describe generally the compliance risk management process, and I'm actually going to say it's the risk management process, and tell me where you or Vero could slot in. So it's generally along the lines of the following: identify your risk, assess your risk, put together a risk management strategy, train your employees on your strategy, implement, monitor the results of that training in their implementation, and then continuously improve or update as appropriate. Where could you slot Vero into that process in or places would you suggest a risk manager slot Vero in?
That's a good question. The only part of the process that I think we don't directly help with is the training aspect of things. I think in the initial study of an organization's policies and procedures and documentation of all sorts is a place we can plug in very easily to identify opportunities, misalignments, places that may not conform to current risk standards or future risk standards. To me, that's probably early in that process, is ingesting information, processing it, helping the company process and understand where they stand. And then from there, improving standards potentially, continuing to monitor, providing regular feedback so that you know when something goes off the rails or when something changes. What does that do? I think that it probably impacts a lot of those different steps. I'm not sure if there's a particular place that it makes most sense for us to start, other than the kind of the beginning initial study of the lay of the land and the environment. It's all stuff that can be loaded in very easily to our platform. And one thing that we say a lot, Tom, is that people, when they think of data analysis stuff like this, they think, oh, I got to find all the information and clean it up and get it into the right format and upload it, and it's going to take so much time and everything. And we're like, you do have to find information and upload it, but the messier it is, the more complicated it is, the less clean it is, the more value we can add. There is a certain simplicity to these types of generative AI, large language model capabilities. It can figure out how to organize it on its own. So you don't have to do that. 10 years ago or 3 years ago, you would have had to do a lot more cleaning and preparation of data and then upload it. And you don't have to do that anymore. Throw it in, let the system figure it out. And that's part of the power and the beauty of this type of scaled approach.
Eric, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time for this episode, but I wanted to ask you before we leave if any of our listeners wanted to connect with you, find out more about Vero AI, or really into the topics we've touched on, what might be the best place or places for them to go?
Thank you. Yeah, we have a website, which is vero-ai.com, and we are shortly preparing to launch a new website, which we're excited about in the next few days. You can also reach me on LinkedIn, Eric Sydell on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me there, and I think we can also share email addresses and things like that. Lots of ways.
Well, Eric, I wanted to thank you again, and I hope we can continue this conversation.
Thank you so much for the time, Tom. Appreciate it.